I was crying. But at the same time, I was looking at her face and my Adam son's face. They was shocked. She didn't cry until now. I think she's still in shock.
That was Abed Salama describing the death of his 5-year-old son Milad in a fiery bus crash on the way to a theme park in Jerusalem in 2012. We'll return to our interview with Abed and journalist Nathan Thrall in a minute. Nathan's new book, A Day in the Life of Abed Salama, Anatomy of a Jerusalem Tragedy. Back in a minute.
دمع بعينك يا بنتي كرزة حمرا شابت شعرها ومروا سنين في رج بصوتك يا بنتي صوت الصدى قاعدة من دون حدا من دون شي وانا هون وانت هناك بعيدة قاعدة انتي وانا
Ya Binti by Rasha Nahas. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. As we continue our conversation with Abed Salama, Palestinian father whose 5-year-old son Milad died in a fiery school bus crash in 2012 in Jerusalem. Journalist Nathan Thrall writes about them in his new book, A Day in the Life of Abed Salama, Anatomy of a Jerusalem Tragedy. Democracy Now!'s Juan Gonzalez and I spoke to Abed and Nathan on Wednesday. Nathan Thrall, you write about that dangerous road that Milad would die on. You said everyone knew how quickly Israeli forces would descend on a West Bank road the moment a Palestinian kid started throwing stones at Israeli soldiers or settlers. Yet the soldiers at the checkpoints, the troops at Ramah base, the fire trucks at the settlements nearby, they had all done nothing, letting the bus burn for more than half an hour. If you can talk about this architecture of separation, of apartheid that led to the beginning, so that what we hear in Abed's story is not just an unfortunate bus crash, but so much of which could have been prevented.
Yeah. You know, the particular series of events that unfolded that day were entirely predictable because of this system of segregation and neglect that exists in this area. And there had been people who had warned of it. There had been previous incidents where tragedy had struck on the other side of this wall, and Israeli services were greatly delayed or even prevented from coming to the area. And so, you know, what the book is showing is not, the passage that you mentioned. Those were the words of a man who was screaming at Israeli soldiers that morning after he had almost single-handedly rescued dozens of children. He entered a burning bus repeatedly and pulled kids out of this bus and saved dozens of them. And he was in a state of shock at the end of this, and he was screaming at every person, but particularly at the Israelis, but also the Palestinian emergency service providers at the scene. And he said those words to an Israeli, an Israeli soldier, and he was then summarily beaten for saying what he said. And spent several days in the hospital afterward. But the point is not that the Israelis who were at the checkpoint just next to the accident and didn't come, or at the military base and took just next to the accident and took forever to come. The point isn't that anybody made a deliberate choice to observe a burning bus of kindergartners and do nothing. It's that this entire system was set up to ensure that there would be a very delayed response, that these people live in utter neglect and nobody cares about them.
You also write in the book about the small scorched backpacks on the road after the accident. If you can talk more about the effect of this system on children, which is the power of this. And let me ask, is really your decision to use this example, this bus crash, the horror of the deaths of the children who died in this fiery crash, to show us what's happening in Palestine and Israel?
Yeah, it was a very deliberate choice to choose an incident that, although horrific, is an incident that takes place, the kind of thing that takes place all over the world, is a terrible car accident or a terrible bus crash, and to show what it means for this seemingly ordinary event to take place in this particular place under this system, because the point is that the system itself, the policies that are in place, the wall that encircles these communities, the desire to demographically engineer Jerusalem so that it would have the maximum number of Jews and the minimum number of Palestinians, and to keep for Israel the maximum amount of land, and the entire route of this wall, the way that it snakes around this community and encircles it and traps it in this ghetto, all of that is dictated by this racist logic. And I didn't want to choose to tell a story that would be exceptionalized and that we would look at some particular act of violence and act about the perpetrators and the victims and why this event took place on this day. I wanted to show the system that is crushing people every day. And it's brought into sharp relief on the worst day of these people's lives, but they are suffering all of these obstacles and all of this pain from this system day in and day out.
Nathan, you also describe in your book not only the total disregard and neglect of the Israeli services to the victims of the accident. You also talk about a week later, a left-wing television reporter, Israeli television reporter, did a story not so much about the accident itself, but how shocked he was at the reaction of residents, of Israeli residents around the area, the accident.
That's right. Several weeks after the accident, an Israeli journalist, a TV journalist, decided to create a feature about something that had shocked him to his core, which was that many Israelis on the day of the accident, young ones in particular, were writing how happy they were that these children had died. And they were, what shocked the journalist, his name is Arik Weiss, what shocked him the most was that people did it without hiding their identity. They felt so comfortable writing racist posts and celebrating the death of innocent 5-year-olds without masking their true names, and so he decided to create a feature, a TV feature, about these kids, but also who wrote the posts. Most of them were kids, I think, and really what his aim was to, as he says, to show a mirror to his own society and to ask, how did we get to a point where so many young people feel that this is acceptable and aren't afraid even of being caught expressing these views. And they go on, he finds many of the people who posted on that day, and they go on to proudly reiterate the kinds of things that they had written that morning. And, the accident was now just over 10 years ago. And we see that the trends that this reporter was highlighting have only gotten worse. And we see, senior ministers in the Israeli government who are openly racist. And when you poll young Israelis, you see they have extremely right-wing views and racist views. So it was a prescient report that he made.
Abed Salama, what has been the response in your community, in your family, to Nathan focusing on this tragedy and the loss of Milad in his book, A Day in the Life of Abed Salama?
In the beginning, my family refused, and especially my wife. She refused to talk about, and until now, she refused to talk about this, the accident, and to talk about Milad, our son, until now. So I took this responsibility alone, and I decided to share our tragedy with Nathan. Maybe for two reasons. The first one is because I loved all the time to talk about my son. When I remember him and I started to speak about him, about what he was doing, about his laughing, his playing, his drawing. So I loved that. Because of this is the main reason. The second reason, Nathan told me, I will make from your case, from this accident, I will write an article. In the beginning, he wrote it as an article, not a book. And this will help your community, Palestinian community. This article will help them to show the Americans and the people around the world how is the Israeli government treat you as Palestinians. So when he write the article and I read it, and we receive many important comments from around the world. It's a very strong article. He said, but I want to make it as a book. If you didn't mind. Of course, I didn't mind from the beginning. As I told you, I want to spend many times with a person like Nathan, talking about my son. When I start to talk about him, I feel that his spirit is behind me, around me. And this time I feel Milad sitting with us here. So I love that. I think, and I hope the book will make some changes and help us as Palestinians to live our lives as all the people around the world. This is what I hope to. Everyone, every father, every who responsible on his family, he wanted only to live in peace and to grow up his children in peace and safe. And as Palestinians, we miss these things, yani. When you go out from your house, or your son go out from his house, you didn't expect him to come back safe, or this is what happened. Because of that, I'm happy to share my story with Nathan. I'm here in New York or in America, this is my first time here. So the life here is different.